What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Shout at Buffalo Bills football podcast. As always, brought to you by Tops Friendly Markets. Are you ready for Slider Sunday this weekend? Pretty big game. Miami Dolphins coming to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Every time you visit slidersunday.com, you have a chance to win free products, brand swag, tailgating gear, trips, and more, courtesy of Tops Friendly Markets. One chance per day, no purchase necessary. Go to slidersunday.com. Check it all out. All right, it is time for our first look at the Miami Dolphins. And to do so, I'm bringing in Daniel Oyefusi, the Dolphins beat reporter from the Miami Herald. We had a little over 20 minutes together talking all things Miami Dolphins. I even took some questions from Shout Bills insiders on the text line. You're going to want to watch this one. Enjoy it. Now's my conversation with Daniel. What is up, everybody? Welcome in to our first look. We do this every week to preview the upcoming Buffalo Bills game. And there's just a ho-hum game this week against the Miami Dolphins. And I am joined by Dolphins beat reporter Daniel Oyefusi. He's the beat reporter from the Miami Herald and is gracious enough to give us a few minutes of his time here today to really get into this thing. Daniel, first off, how are you? And what's it like this season covering the greatest show on turf, the new edition?
I know, yeah. First off, thanks for having me. And yeah, it's what it's looking like. 70-20. I mean, you're going to get those comparisons. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch that for sure.
So coming into the season, I will say, first of all, I think the Miami Dolphins are exactly who I thought they were. Coming into the year, I told anybody that wanted to listen, that was pushing the Jets agenda, like that is not the problem in this division. The Miami Dolphins, I think, are the problem because we're not even talking about the first month of the season. By the end of the year, you know what you're getting with the offense. But that Vic Fangio defense by December is probably going to look a lot different than it does early on, even this season, likely getting Jalen Ramsey back later in the year. So this is a bona fide Super Bowl contender. They were going into the season. How have you seen them kind of fly under the radar, if they have, and how they're embracing this season as now, the early, AFC East leaders?
Yeah, well, I'll say during the offseason, I think they definitely did fly under the radar a bit, and it was understandable. The Bills have won the division for the past couple of years, and then obviously with the Jets acquiring Aaron Rodgers, they're the media capital of the country, of the world, really. I mean, of course, they were going to get a lot of attention, but yeah, I mean, from the early part of the offseason, especially, with the acquisition of Jalen Ramsey, the hiring of Vic Fangio, and obviously the continuity of the offense coming back, I was really, really bullish on this team. Now, did I expect them to put up 70 points in game 3 or in any game this season? No. But you really saw the potential of this offense. A lot of the players spoke about the continuity, year 2 of the Shanahan style offense, and just kind of having a greater understanding of what they could do. And again, you're not going to see 70 points again, I don't believe. But again, it just speaks to that continuity and a team that's kind of a sleeping giant and not really a sleeping giant anymore because they have the attention of the NFL world.
The thing that stands out to me the most is like teams know when you face Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins offense, they are going to run the ball a lot and pretty well. And I mean, I think that's what people spend the most time preparing for. And it usually doesn't matter. They're still able to consistently run the ball. We saw just an absolute barrage of running plays from Raheem Mostert, obviously Devin Achan. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Devon Achan. Devon Achan. Or Devon Achan. It's a little hard. We're still working on it on our end, but Devon Achan.
Okay, because it was a chain for a while. I was conversating in all kinds of different ways. But any way you want to say his name, I mean, the dude is absolutely special. I want to get into him in a moment. But this running attack, like, how have you seen them, not only like the runners, but the blockers, be able to kind of consistently attack teams and have it, no matter what teams plan to do? I mean, people struggle to stop them.
Yeah, so the running game was probably like one of the major question marks about this offense entering year 2 of Mike McDaniel's scheme, kind of accompanied with the offensive line and how that was going to shake out. They dealt with a lot of injuries, had some young guys that didn't play very well last year. And that was a concerted emphasis this offseason, running the ball more and running the ball more effectively. What stood out to me in these first couple games is McDaniel obviously comes from that Shanahan tree. So you think outside zone. But it's not just that. I mean, they have a diversity of run concepts, whether it's outside zone, inside zone. They do kind of a backwards toss that develops into a zone. They have a lot of power and gap concepts, and it's the manner in which they get to it. So they're not like reinventing the wheel necessarily. They're not like inventing new plays and whatnot, but it's just the manner in which they do it with different formations, different splits, the motion, whether it's across the formation, orbit motion into the backfield. And then they asked their wide receivers to help out a lot. If you look at Devon Achan's final 67-yard touchdown run, there was great blocking on the offensive line, but Cedric Wilson, their wide receiver, comes from the left side of the formation. He comes into the middle of the field, and he gets a great block on the safety that really springs Achan for that run. So it's the combination of the offensive line, the motion, and the wide receivers. I mean, they'll put Tyreek Hill on an edge defender and kind of make him deliver a crack block, and he's up to do that. So they really stress, all 9 guys, I guess not including the quarterback, contributing to the blocking scheme. And they brought in Butch Berry, who was with Denver last year, kind of got a bad rap as he exited the Broncos, but they've really credited him for his teaching methods and the way that he's been able to get that group together and get the most out of them through 3 games.
Achane, 233 all-purpose yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, he is explosive, and everybody's seen the videos of the Dolphins draft room when they were able to get him, later in the draft. What has he meant? Like, what does he do so well, and what have players and coaches said about why he's so tough to handle? And I mean, this was a coming out party last week, and I think now it's almost like, all right, you got Hill, you expect Jalen Waddle to get back. Now you have a whole nother layer to this thing that I think makes it a little extra scary.
Yeah, quick funny backstory on the drafting of Achane. When we spoke to Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer that night after they selected him, Mike McDaniel was talking about wanting to select him with their first pick, which came in the 2nd round. They obviously drafted Cam Smith, the cornerback from South Carolina, but he was really getting antsy. He was talking to Chris Greer about maybe trading up, and Chris Greer was like, calm down, we're good, and everything worked out. So I know after that performance, they're really glad that they were able to get him when they did. But yeah, so obviously, this guy is track speed. I mean, he ran track in high school. He ran track at Texas A&M, and that's the first thing that stands out about him. But when you talk to coaches and talk to Jimbo Fisher, who coached him at Texas A&M, they talk about how he's a complete player. He's not just a track guy that's putting on football pads. He has a feel for when to hit the hole, when to stay patient, when to accelerate. He's 5'8", about 190 pounds. He told me he put on some weight after while he was training for the combine and whatnot. So he's up from 180 now, about 190. And you see that in his first touchdown run, he showed the speed to get to the edge, but then he dropped his pads. He had some tough run, and he worked his way into the end zone. So they like the fact that he's a complete football player. And like you said, I mean, that's just another element. They're going to do a lot of the stuff that they do with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle with him. They're going to put him in motion and use his speed to really confuse defenses and put them in a bind. When Mike McDaniel first got here, he quickly let it be known that he loves speed. He wants to build a team built around speed that can really test every blade of grass and really force you to cover every blade of grass on this field. And Achane's presence only adds to that.
And now a word from our sponsor. Start your Slider Sunday winning streak with King's Hawaiian this football season and earn rewards to redeem for free product, brand swag, tailgating gear, and more at slidersunday.com. You can get all the details. Visit the Tops Deli section too and look for the bright orange King's Hawaiian displays to scan the QR for a chance to instantly win tailgating prizes. Visit topsmarkets.com/slidersunday for slider recipes that are sure to blow away all of your party guests. All right, back to the show. You mentioned the motion there, and to me, that's the piece of it. I think, was it the Dolphins that had the motion on the block kick?
No, that was the Patriots.
That was the Patriots.
Used that against the Dolphins.
It just came to mind because there's so many different ways that I feel like people are trying to do some pre-snap things to get an advantage. I mean, as offenses, get so dynamic in this league, you got to figure out different ways to keep up with them. And I feel like the Bills have a really good offense, but this is one that we saw last week. I mean, they get up on you so early that it then turns into a completely different style of game. The motion, though, specifically for the Miami offense, have you noticed that they're doing it even more, leaning into it more this year, or is that something that has been prevalent and about the same amount going back to last season?
Yeah, well, motion is a key part of what they do on offense, pre-snap motion. And it's funny you mentioned that. Just before we started recording, I saw this stat from ESPN Analytics that the Dolphins are up to 59% of plays with pre-snap motion, and that's like by far, the league leader. So they are definitely leaning into it even more. They've kind of added some new wrinkles to it, especially, going into that week 1 opener against the Los Angeles Chargers. They added this new kind of inside out motion where Tyreek Hill or a pass catcher will be in a tight alignment on the on one side of the formation, and then they'll kind of sprint out and get a running start essentially before the snap. So yeah, they're definitely leaning it into it more, and it's not just Tyreek. It's all of their skill position players. And they talk about how this motion isn't just like we call, a lot of times you hear people refer to it as like window dressing. Like, no, it's not insignificant. It's purposeful. There's a method to the madness behind every single type of motion that they have, and it all contributes into what they do, and they're really successful. I mean, they're again, so referencing that ESPN Analytics stat that I brought up before. I mean, they have like the best EPA or the most efficient offense when they use that motion. So there's a reason for it, and they're leading into it even more in 2023.
I put out we do a subtext insider group, and I watched back the Dolphins game, and I put out this morning a message that it's unbelievable to watch a game where a quarterback, it feels like he wasn't touched in that game. Like, when when we were playing in the backyard as kids and there was an all-time quarterback and you told all the people that were on defense, like, you're not allowed to touch the quarterback, like they're just sitting back there and kind of picking things off. That's what it felt like watching Tua. Is this was that an indication of the offensive line play? Tua, like, how is this happening? Because I think one of the question marks that even I had coming into the season was this unit that at times last year wasn't great, but it seems like early on this season, even against the Patriots 2 weeks ago, was really good.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a couple of things working together. I definitely want to give credit to the offensive line because, as I mentioned before, they were banged up last year. Some of their young guys did not play up to the expectation. And this year, the Dolphins didn't really make a big splash in terms of acquiring offensive linemen. Obviously, last year they brought in Teron Armstead and Connor Williams. Those guys really solidified the group, but they still needed left guard and right tackle to round out. So I got to give credit to Kendall Lamb, who stepped up in the first 2 games with Teron Armstead out. They signed Isaiah Wynn from the Patriots. He's looked really good. And then right tackle Austin Jackson has really stepped up and is probably playing the best ball of his young career in his 4th season. So I have to give credit to them. But Tua had a good point. If you look at some of these various graphs that are on Twitter, Tua has the deepest air yards, average air yards per pass, and he's getting the ball out at the quickest rate, like in less than 2.5 seconds. So, and that's unheard of. Usually, like, if you're getting the ball out very quickly, your average depth of target is fairly low, but it's like inverse, and it's just incredible. And it speaks to the offensive line. It speaks to Tua's quick release, and just the fact that the Dolphins wide receivers can get depth downfield so quickly. I mean, that's one of the benefits of this offense and this scheme. It's not just that like they're burning you downfield 30 yards each time and you're getting beat deep. It's that they can run those in-breaking routes so quickly. So it's a lot of all that working together. Obviously, keeping Tua healthy is a big part. It's really like the number one key to their season. We saw how that derailed their year last year. They're making efforts to make sure that within the scheme they can be productive and still be efficient. But the offensive line also is stepping up, and they blocked really well.
Let's flip it to defense real quick, and then I'm going to throw some rapid fire questions at you. Some of our insiders want to learn a little bit more about the Dolphins. They send in some questions, so I'll send those to you the last 5 minutes or so. 8 sacks in 3 games for this Dolphins defensive line. First off, what's the status of Jalen Phillips? What do you think his outlook is for this week? And how have you felt the defensive front has been so far this season? I mean, a couple weeks ago, Andrew Van Ginkel looked like an absolute menace. Obviously, Bradley Chubb there, and we can get into him in a moment. But overall, what's your early season assessment there?
Yeah, so first on Jalen Phillips, he sustained an oblique injury in the middle of last Sunday's game. Mike McDaniel said he's day to day. We'll see if he practices on Wednesday. I anticipate he's going to be at least limited. Might not practice Wednesday or Thursday. He's just coming back from a back injury that forced him to miss the week 2 game. So definitely going to be cautious with him. I'm sure that he's going to be pushing to play in that game. But the Dolphins have really been very, very precautious and just have been very careful with a lot of their guys bringing them back. So I don't want to make any assumptions or declarations that he's going to play or he's not. But definitely got to monitor his status throughout the week. As far as the entire defensive front, I think it's been kind of a mixed bag. Obviously when you score 70 points, the defense is going to be kind of an afterthought. And they were they got up early, so they were able to kind of tee off on Russell Wilson and whatnot. But if you look at the first 2 games, which I think is kind of more indicative of what the unit has been so far, you saw a lot of struggles in that week 1 game. Didn't really get to Justin Herbert until late in that game when they made a key stop. We saw it again. They got a lot more pressure in the week 2 game against the Patriots. But you saw like a defensive front that just kind of like rises to the occasion. When they need a key stop, you see Bradley Chubb and some of these other guys getting stops late. They have really good depth. You mentioned Andrew Van Ginkel, who's like been cross-trained at inside linebacker, but then he can play outside linebacker in week 2 and have the game of his life. So yeah, a lot of the talk about this defense entering in the offseason was on the secondary because when you get Jalen Ramsey and then you have a guy like Xavier Howard and Javon Holland, obviously there's a lot of high expectations for that group. But I think they're still led by the defensive front and their ability to set the edge, stop the run, and then get to the pass rush. Get to the quarterback with the pass rush. And with the Vic Fangio led defense, they're not going to blitz a ton. So it's really important to get to the quarterback with 4 guys.
And then like with Chubb, where are things at with him? They gave up a lot to go get him. Is your sense that fans want more from him? Has he been that like premier piece that they were hoping for him to be?
Yeah, when you trade, a first round pick and multiple other picks, and then you give, somebody $110 million extension, there's rightfully going to be very big expectations. Bradley Chubb has acknowledged that, when they traded for him at last year's trade deadline, he had 5.5 sacks in 8 games with the Broncos. He finished, the remaining 8 games or so of the year, 9 games with 2.5 sacks with Miami. He dealt with some injuries, so it wasn't the start to his Miami tenure that he had hoped for, that others had hoped for. I know he had a big sack in week 2 on kind of the game-sealing drive when the Patriots got the ball back with a chance to tie the game. So that was good. And it was really probably his best game as a Dolphin. He was really impactful against the run and whatnot and applied more pressure. So without Jalen Phillips, that was really good to see from him. But obviously, when you trade for a guy and give him that much money, you want to see the big sack numbers. Asking Mike McDaniel about Bradley Chubb last week, ahead of his reunion with his former team, what McDaniel said that stood out to me was that, obviously, you want the sacks, but an edge rusher is kind of like a wide receiver sometimes, where the stats might not be there, but they impact the game in a lot of other ways. They draw attention and free stuff for other guys. He said that what he appreciates about Chubb is that he takes pride in that. He takes pride in being an all-around player and setting the edge, and freeing guys on leaps and stunts. So that stood out to me. But obviously, yeah, when you give up all those assets and all that money, you want a guy to really produce those big sack numbers. So, still kind of waiting for that to all come together consistently with Bradley Chubb.
And now a quick word from our sponsor. Check this out, everybody. Shout. The Insider text line is absolutely bustling with great Bills content from myself and Ryan Talbot and interactions with a bunch, over 300 Bills fans that are taking part in the action. And right now, the Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Beyer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street, Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give him a call at 716-852-1234 and let him know the Shout Boys sent you. Check out litrolaw.com. All right, rapid fire here. Is Achane going to take over running back 1 duties at all this season? And what is the health status of Jalen Waddle?
Yeah, so with Achane, yeah, that's a really good question. I know that he's going to be a very, very a hot guy and popular guy in terms of waiver wire pickups. I'm kind of a little wary about that because, I don't think he's going to run for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns again. And, obviously Raheem Mostert is still a big focal part. They love what he brings to that backfield. Jeff Wilson could come back in a couple of weeks from IR. Savon Ahmed is dealing with a groin injury, so he could come back as well. So I don't know. McDaniel was asked about that, about kind of the backfield makeup, and he said, hey, when you play well, you make it hard to not get other opportunities. But I don't think he's going to be like a bell cow. I don't think we're ever going to get to that point. So I'd kind of maybe, pump the brakes on saying he's going to be RB1. Jalen Waddle, as of Monday afternoon, when McDaniel spoke to local reporters, he said that he remains in the concussion protocol, but he's optimistic about him returning. He actually practiced on Friday. I believe it was just a walkthrough. So he was at the stage he was in the protocol, he was able to participate. So it's going to be interesting to see if what they do on Wednesday. If it's a padded practice, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do some stuff. If it's another kind of walkthrough with just shells, he might be able to participate again. But yeah, I mean, I think that he's definitely trending to be able to play on Sunday.
A question from one of our insiders: what is Tua bad at? Will any pressure force him to be offbeat? I guess they haven't had a heavy D line with pressure game yet, so she's wondering is that something that you think would affect him at all?
Yeah, what is Tua bad at? Through the first 3 games of the season, it seems like he can do everything. It's really interesting to see what Sean McDermott is going to do. Vic Fangio, Vance Joseph, the Broncos defensive coordinator, had a big reputation for blitzing. He really didn't blitz Tua at all, and I think that it was because of the threat of that speed. They were missing some guys on defense, but you can't just sit in zones. Like they've kind of like mastered how to defeat zones and those zone rules. So you got to switch it up. You have to find some way to kind of impact those wide receivers. I know a lot was made about the Chargers plan last year, playing a lot of press man. I think at some point you have to do that a little bit because you can't just let these guys get free reign and free releases off the line of scrimmage and just kind of run as they see fit. But yeah, you got to switch these looks up because they're in a zone right now where they know how to beat man, they know how to beat zone, they know how to beat the blitz. So you got to keep throwing the curveballs at them. You got to show some stuff pre-snap and mix it up post-snap because again, if you just stay in one look, they're going to dice you up for sure.
Mm-hmm. Here's another question from Rory. I want to know if the Dolphins feel as nervous about this game as the Bills do. And I don't know if he's referring to like players or fans. I don't think that players are going to reveal that they're feeling nervous, but I think that's interesting because it feels a little bit like the last couple of years as Tyreek Hill has entered the equation. There's been this dynamic where, the Bills are the AFC East reigning champions, but coming into this season, like there's been a lot of doubt about this team. And I almost feel like the Bills go into this game, even though they're the favorite, or what was it, a 2-point favorite. So really, I mean, the books are thinking that the Miami's going to come in here. Better, yeah. And so
on neutral feet at least.
Right. And so does it feel like that in Miami that they've, I don't want to say lap them, but like now that they're kind of like the top dogs of the division?
I wouldn't say that, and I don't think that even any fans in Miami would say that like they've lapped the Bills. Obviously, the gap has closed, but they did lose 2 of 3 last year, including having their season ended in Buffalo. And obviously, Tua didn't play in that game, but the facts are the facts. But the gap has closed. I think that a lot of people said that the 70-20 win was a statement game, but McDaniel was quick to mention. He mentioned this a lot. Like you can't carry over points into the next game. So this is the real statement game. Obviously, you beat up on a Broncos team that is so not very good, but now you're heading into Buffalo, which I think is going to be their toughest road environment to date. They talked about wanting to clean up the play operation, the play clock operation. It's going to be raucous at Highmark Stadium. It's going to be a big test. And again, they can't bring over those points from the past game into this one, but I think they're entering the game with a lot of confidence. Raheem Mostert, I asked you, like, what does this game say, and what type of statement does this past game say? And he said, we're that team. Like they're feeling themselves, but it's not like I don't think it's an arrogant feeling themselves. I think there's just a lot of confidence within that group. But again, Mike McDaniel has said it a lot. This is this is the team that's really standing in front of us in terms of our goals. And he said on multiple occasions that the team has kind of a bitter taste in their mouth from the way last season ended in terms of the second half kind of falling apart, and then obviously losing to the Bills on the road. So they're not resting on the laurels, but they're entering this game with a lot of confidence, but a lot of respect for the Bills as well.
Last one here, strengths and weaknesses of the Dolphins defense. I'm combining two questions here. And then when you're looking at this matchup, which Josh does, the familiarity with this Bills offense, what do you think the Dolphins try to do to slow down the Bills, who are kind of evolving a little bit into a more balanced attack like we've seen the last couple of weeks after the blunder in New Jersey to start the year?
Yeah, so strengths and weaknesses. That's a really good question. I would say strength is still that defensive front. Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer, Raekwon Davis, Benjamin Ginkel. They have a lot of guys. Emmanuel Ogbah as well, who's really coming off the bench now for them. They have a lot of depth up front. I would say there's still. I mean, hey, the defenses look really really good, but I would still say maybe you have some questions about the secondary. They just benched Eli Apple, who was playing outside corner, their nickel packages. Now they're moving Kader Kohu from the slot outside, and they've moved veteran Justin Bethel, who's usually a special teams guy, but has played really well as a nickelback. They're moving him inside. So if there's any spot that maybe you can explain, maybe it's that. You have Stephon Diggs, you have Gabe Davis. I know Trent Sherfield and others are kind of secondary pass catchers. Maybe you get into some two tight end sets with Kincaid and try to exploit some of that, because they're going to play a lot of nickel, the Dolphins are. So I'd say maybe that's the weakness, but they looked really good in all phases. In terms of what they do against Josh Allen and this Bills offense, I think you're going to see a big reversal from past years. So with Brian Flores, with Josh Boyer, we saw a lot of zero blitz. We saw a lot of man-to-man, no safety over top. And it was really a boomer bust type of defense. We saw last year Josh Allen beating Xavier Howard on a cover zero blitz and finding Stephon Diggs. But I think you're going to see a lot of zone. You're going to see a lot of too high looks. You're going to see the Dolphins really dare and force the Bills to run the ball and work their way down the field, and kind of hope that eventually that pass rush can get to Josh Allen and maybe he can make a mistake. Not nearly as much blitzing as we've seen in years past, for sure.
Daniel, I lied. I kept you longer than 20 minutes, but that's because everything that you were saying was really good stuff, and I think it's going to help fans get ready for this awesome matchup. I mean, this is what football's all about, man. Like, two of the best teams in the NFL fighting it off. We're going to be fighting it out. We're going to be in the press box watching it all unfold. Let everybody know where they can find your coverage this week so that they can kind of keep up to date on the Dolphins going to this matchup.
Yeah, for all your minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day Dolphins updates, follow me on Twitter at Daniel Oyefusi, just like you see below me. Miami Herald, MiamiHerald.com. Also record the weekly Dolphins in Depth podcast. That's on YouTube and anywhere you get podcasts. So definitely tune in and lock into all that stuff.
Daniel, thank you so much. Have a good week. See you on Sunday.
Yep, what's that? Thanks, Matt.